format for this presentation is really going to be really quick. It's going to be a little bit of presentation from each of our partners, NVIDIA and Cisco. Then we're going to go into a panel format, and hopefully everyone got the email this morning about the margarita mixer. Go ahead and get the where we get the lime juice. I think everyone had to go get. Hopefully everyone's got lime juice. So my name is Al Solorzano. I'm the VP of our end user computing practice. Today we're going to have Gene from NVIDIA. I'll let him introduce himself when he gets to his presentation. We have Andy from Cisco, and for everybody that's worked with Entisys360, we should all know Troy Couch. He's been here for quite some time with our organization as an enterprise architect. And again, if you want to follow Troy or myself on Twitter, we are on there if you have any questions. So let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, format-wise, we're just going to have a brief kind of discussion from Entisys360 myself, just talking about the problem, what are we trying to address, what are our customers going through today. We'll have NVIDIA give us some updates on GPUs and a little bit more about their conference that was called GTC. Cisco is going to come and talk about their Cisco data center story, specifically around HyperFlex and what it can do around VDI deployments and some next steps that you can do to take some actions. We're going to go through a panel. As I mentioned earlier, please put your questions in the chat windows. If you put them in the Q&A, that's fine too. We'll deal with that. And what we're going to do after that is margarita time. So hopefully everyone's got their chips and salsa, maybe even bought a little guacamole for today, maybe even bought a sombrero. But let's go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining. So let's talk about some problem statements. So, as we've been dealing with everything over the last many years around VDI is we have Windows 10. Right, that's kind of the next evolution that everyone's dealing with. Windows 10 is consuming more resources on every single release. Unfortunately, this data is kind of going back to about 2018, 2019, but we were seeing the same thing. Every single release, there was an increased amount of graphics consumption, and it was having an impact because the machines didn't necessarily have graphics capabilities. So we saw compute skyrocketing. So the same number of users on the system, you would do a new Windows 10 build and the user started having issues. So that's something that we're going to be talking about today. The other aspect is VDI deployments typically get the blame, but realistically, there's a whole bunch of other things that typically are involved, right? We have storage infrastructure, hypervisors, servers, we have the management, all kind of pointing fingers at each other, and they're not able to keep everything up to date within their architecture. So we have a lot of things that we have to worry about around typically a VDI deployment that are not necessarily in our control as the VDI administrators. On top of that, we have basically the whole COVID and everyone had to go work from home experience, right? Now, of course, every organization is going through a little bit of changes. Some are going back to the office, some are staying hybrid, some are actually getting rid of offices. It all depends. So work from home is kind of here to stay, in my opinion. And these are just some of the things that we're dealing with and we're going to be talking about today. So what are some of the problems that we're seeing, technically speaking? Traditional three-tier architecture can be difficult to manage. A lot of times what we see is organizations plan for X number of users, so they size everything for X. Let's say it's 5,000 users, and then they realize to get to the 5,000th and first user, they're going to have to re-architect, and that's pretty difficult. Or they're overbuying or even underbuying infrastructure, right? Hey, we plan for 1,000 users on our organization, and now we're dealing with the fact that we have all these remote workers from home, and now we need to plan for that. Do we have enough infrastructure? They don't typically. We're also seeing a lot of customers look at cloud-based VDI deployments, and they're kind of realizing that the cost over the course of the entire lifetime of VDI starts to rack up. So it's just something that they're concerned with. VDI replacement that a lot of our customers are starting to talk to us about. They're typically taking a GPU-enabled laptop and trying to squeeze it into a non-GPU accelerated virtual desktop, and that just doesn't work, right? So the user experience can go way down. And GPUs in the cloud can also be very expensive. So these are just some of the aspects that we're typically having conversations with. And what we're seeing is a lot of our customers are looking at HyperFlex solutions combined with NVIDIA GPUs to kind of bring that public scale capability, the simplified administration, bring those GPU capabilities for the workloads to everybody. And that's really giving a better user experience for all of our users, simplifying it for IT administration, reducing some of our costs, and it's kind of a win-win-win, right? And you don't usually get the win-win-win type scenarios. So let's talk now a little bit drilling into where three-tier versus hyper-converged for VDI. Now, we're all kind of familiar with traditional three-tier, right? So we're concerned with storage, compute, networking, everything separated from each other. We had a lot of customers over the many years, and even just recently with COVID, that we were like, hey, they have enough compute, but their storage infrastructure is going to need to get revamped to add any additional users, right? They just don't have enough storage. It's going to be an entire storage project just to add VDI users, or vice versa. They had plenty of plenty of storage, but not enough compute, so they had to go buy a whole bunch of servers and size it and architect it and kind of readdress maybe some of their storage architecture to address some of those problems. So it's kind of complex to manage for customers. It became difficult to scale linearly for sure. But even as you scale, even if you're not scaling linearly, it's typically a big jump, right? Hey, this is what it's sized for 1,000, and I have to make a big jump and replace everything to get to the next tier of 2,000 users. Kind of be difficult. Typically, you also have multiple groups you're having to coordinate with, right? You have to talk to the storage team, the hypervisor team, the compute team, all involved, get the management understanding like, hey, it's not my fault. I'm having to deal with another group. That other group has a backlog of projects that we're trying to deal with. We're trying to address it. We also require better planning. As I mentioned earlier, you kind of buy within those tiers models, right? Maybe you buy a certain storage controller and the storage controller size for X number of users. Same thing, if you go beyond that X number of users, it's a complete replacement of that architecture. And so you're typically having to buy for the max consumption. Hey, I think I'm going to get to 5,000 users in 3 years, so I'm going to buy for 5,000, knowing that it's really only going to be 500 in year one, maybe a couple thousand in year two, and I might not even get to 5,000 in year three, ever, maybe possibly, but you had to size for that. So hyperconverge really addresses all of those problems, right? It's simpler to manage, and you'll see why Cisco is going to say that, and we agree with them. It's easy to start small, right? So you can start with just a couple of nodes in the infrastructure, and you get that linear scale, which is great and fantastic for projects because you just never know when someone's going to come to you and go, give me 1,000 users tomorrow. You're like, okay, I know exactly what I need to buy. Here's how it scales linearly for my organization. Consolidated administration, lower cost, scales appropriately, and again, quick to deploy and quick to scale. So all of those things are going to be covered by Cisco in just a couple of minutes. So that's why we really believe that the HyperFlex solution from Cisco is a great architecture. It's hyperconverged storage controllers on every machine, or not necessarily on every machine, but on the machines that are appropriate. So if you have a competing hyperconverged solution, for anybody that does have one or has looked at some of them, the differentiator, or one of the differentiators that we say to Cisco, is that you do not have to have a storage controller on every one of the nodes. So we can lower the cost and actually increase the density. And that's something that we've seen a lot of our customers be very interested in from Cisco themselves. So you'll see Cisco talk about that, and we highly agree with them. Definitely is a good solution for going out around the VDI architecture. So now let's talk about GPU and where NVIDIA fills in. So we believe, of course, GPU is a no-brainer for CAD, CAM, GIS use cases. And by the way, for anybody that wants to look at some videos, in the next couple of slides, I do have some QR codes, and we'll be sending out the presentation also as part of this. But there's some QR codes that kind of shows you how the motion of all of these systems work. And in fact, as a good example, if you ever try to use Google Earth in a VDI session that does not have a GPU, it hangs, doesn't even work. So these are just some examples where like CAD, CAM, and GIS, it's a no-brainer, got to have it. But the reality is it really should be GPU for all, and it really should be a no-brainer for all. So with Windows 10 increasing usage of GPU, Edge, Office, HTML, all of those applications can benefit from GPU. So what we're seeing also with the work from home use cases is that collaboration's another one that we're trying to deal with in terms of, whether it's video cams. I think we all agree we've used our webcams way more in the last year than we have ever probably in our entire lives. And so because of that, you need to deal with that increased consumption and usage from those applications. So we definitely are seeing it not only in theory, but also in the real world with what we're seeing our customers and our users going through today. And architecturally, roughly speaking, it's a pretty simplistic architecture, but basically you're putting a GPU in each of your servers and then you're carving them up into smaller GPUs. So you can take a very high-end GPU and carve it up into 16, even 32 individual sized instances, so that each user gets between 1, 2, maybe even upwards of 16 or even 32 gigs of RAM, depending on how you're architecting the solution. But the reality is we get an improved user benefit for from a user experience. We're enabling not only just, again, the graphics applications, but anything that can see a GPU. So what we're seeing from our customers is they're getting better experience, potentially being able to reduce their OpEx costs for managing all of these weird applications that are coming into the environment, the demands of collaboration, the demands of all these websites that users are going through, and how it affects the VDI user's experience. Okay, so that's it. That's a quick little kind of brain tease to kind of get everybody going. There's my timer telling me 10 minutes, and I nailed it, Gene. So we are good, Gene. Gene, I'm going to pass the ball over to you now and make you the presenter.
Fantastic. Thanks, Al. Nice, warm intro. And I'm going to share content. Let's go to...
Don't forget your 10-minute
Gene
timer,
can see
Gene.
that share jelly bean right in the bottom.
I'm not going to officially start my timer until I presentation mode. Okay, can you see?
Flip it.
We might want to flip your screen over.
Yeah, we got the presenter mode, not the presentation mode.
Is that better?
No, I think usually you have to, in PowerPoint, you have to set that up.
Yeah, go to the swap displays up in your top left.
There we go.
Looking good.
Okay. So, hey, thanks everyone for all the participants in the call for taking the time out of the end of your day to listen to us. And thanks to our friends at Cisco and Entisys360 for hosting this event. And that's me. The last time I wore a suit, I think that was a photo taken at my sister's wedding 10 years ago. My name is Gene Monaco. I manage a team of product sales specialists in North America focused on supporting our partners like Cisco and Entisys in selling our vGPU solutions or virtualized GPU solutions. I'm going to do an overview, kind of add on to what Al already spoke to. What is GPU-accelerated VDI? What are the benefits? What are the use cases? And then I'm going to spend a couple of minutes talking about some announcements that, as a company, NVIDIA just made at our GTC, our Graphics Technology Conference a couple of weeks ago. We announced a couple of new software platforms that'll all be available through Cisco and Entisys, as well as new GPUs, physical cards that we announce every year. And I'm going to try to do this all in under 10 minutes. So let's start that timer and dive right in. I'm going to kind of tack on to Al's problem statement. I'm certainly not going to bore you guys by reading all the statistics on this slide, but I will drill into the top slide. And Al, you mentioned something that, well, I think I heard you say work from home is here to stay. Well, 87% of executives at U.S. enterprises agree with that statement. So 87% of companies in this country expect to continue supporting working from home at least 3 days a week. So that plays very well into the joint Cisco, NVIDIA, Entisys solution that we're going to be showing you guys. Again, just what we're going to touch on today, we're going to talk a little bit about enterprise artificial intelligence, enterprise AI, and I'm going to talk a little bit about one of the new GPUs we announced to support AI. And then on the left-hand side, we're going to talk about flexible workplace. What does that mean? That's not just VDI, but we've also announced a remote collaboration product for content creators. I'll get more into that. That's going to be called Omniverse Enterprise, and we've got some new GPUs to support that. All right, so the basic premise of vGPU, or what we for many years informally called grid, and many of the folks on this call probably recognize the term grid. The basic premise of grid is that every device that we use on an everyday basis, whether it's a tablet, mobile phone, laptop, a workstation under your desk, has some kind of dedicated discrete graphics card, very likely built by NVIDIA. So thank you for using those and being our customers. But until about 7 years ago, when we invented the concept of virtualizing the GPU in 2014, VDI didn't have any GPU. It was very CPU intensive. It was 100% CPU intensive, as a matter of fact. And as applications and operating systems became more graphics intensive, end user performance of CPU only VDI started to struggle. So we came up with the concept of taking a physical GPU, integrating it with a common hypervisor. VMware is the lead hypervisor partner we work with, but we support many of the other hypervisors out there, and slicing up that GPU and delivering a fixed slice of a GPU into a VDI session. That is the basic premise of vGPU. So I don't need to spend a lot of time on this slide because I can thank you, Al, for covering this one better than I could have, but I will talk a little bit about what I refer to as VDI 1.0 on the left. And a little bit of my background is I sold VDI 1.0 for Citrix for 8 years prior to joining NVIDIA. So I was selling CPU-only VDI running on a 2U rack mount pizza box server, and you'd lay in Citrix Hypervisor or VMware or Red Hat or any number of others, and then deliver a CPU-only VDI or VM experience. It worked fine, in the early 2000s up until maybe 2010, 2012, where the applications started to become very graphics intensive. So on the right, which is what Al already covered, VDI 2.0 or VDI with vGPU. We take a HyperFlex node at the bottom and we put one of our certified GPUs in that node, and all the other stuff in green is all the vGPU goodness. Those are all different software components that are all delivered by Entisys. They have more expertise in doing this than any of the other partners we've ever worked with. And it's worth mentioning, Entisys was, if not one of the first, they quite possibly could have been the very first partner that we signed onto our partner network in 2015. When we launched that, we came to Entisys and said, what do you guys think? You want to resell our stuff? And of course, Mike Stroll and Matt General and Al and everyone embraced it. So big thanks to you guys for helping launch this product line. And now we're 7 years into it, and it's business is good. So it wouldn't be an NVIDIA presentation if we didn't show some speeds and feeds and some new GPUs that we announced. Just 2 weeks ago, we announced the A10, which is kind of the little brother to the A30, which I'm going to talk about in a few more slides. I'm kind of going in reverse order here. The A10 does a great job with artificial intelligence work as well as graphics work. It's a small form factor, so a single slot GPU draws a low amount of power and spits out a lot of horsepower. Really good for high graphics intensity VDI workloads. The GPU on the right, I expect to be our really go-to workhorse GPU for high density, low cost GPU accelerated VDI. This is the A16. Many of you may be familiar with a GPU that we've been selling for many years called the M10, M as in Maxwell. This is the successor to the M10. This is a 64 gig GPU and spread across 4 individual 16 gig processors. What that means for our customers is you can put a lot of users on this GPU and you can mix and match power users with knowledge workers. It's the only GPU in our portfolio that allows you to mix and match users on a single board. And then here's the whole portfolio of GPUs that support VDI. Actually, it's not the whole portfolio, but these are the latest, greatest ones. There's still some legacy ones that we support. We talked about the A10 and the A16. The A40 on the left-hand side is a really heavy-duty, very powerful, very fast, high-performance graphics GPU. So think about people in media and entertainment doing content creation. Think about high-end CAD usage, GIS users. They're using the A40. For anything that's not as graphics intensive, the T4 and the A16 and the A10 will suffice. 2 of these were announced at GTC. The other 2, A40 and the T4, have been around for a while, and they're all great, very proven solutions. So at NVIDIA, we pride ourselves on both knowledge of the workload and applications and our relationships with individual ISVs. Al did a great job of talking about how GPU-accelerated VDI used to be just for CAD CAM type use, GIS use, heavy-duty geospatial applications like Petrel, ArcGIS, etc. Well, now with Windows 10 and with the advent of everyone on Zoom and WebEx calls on a daily basis, we're starting to key in on the applications on the left-hand side. And you don't really think about Firefox or Chrome or even Microsoft Office as GPU-intensive applications because they didn't used to be. But now with Windows 10 and new versions of Windows 10 coming up every year, these applications are very graphics intensive. So running CPU-only VDI for just a knowledge worker on Windows 10 using Office and maybe WebEx and Zoom occasionally doesn't cut it anymore. You need to add a GPU to that. So I think it's a democratized solution, GPUs for all. It really works well. I'm on it. We use it on a daily basis in-house. I know our friends at Entisys use it and Cisco as well. I'm looking at the clock here, and I've got a couple minutes left. So let's talk about some of the software announcements we made at GTC. And let me back up to this slide. Forgive me. Take a look at the Autodesk applications at the top of this slide, like AutoCAD, 3ds Max, Maya, and Revit. That's a segue into Omniverse. What is Omniverse? Omniverse is the first multi-ISV collaboration tool for content creators, CAD designers. Think about an architecture firm that's designing a building. Well, they're probably subbing out jobs to 10 different firms. All of those 10 firms are using different CAD applications. Someone might be using AutoCAD, someone's using SketchUp, someone is using PTC Creo. Well, there's never been a real-time collaboration platform where you could share and update those schematics and design documents and design models in real time in front of everyone else. That's what Omniverse does. This is brand new software. We just announced it. It's not GA yet, but when it is GA, it'll be supported on Cisco and it'll be resold by our friends at Entisys. This next slide kind of shows the software stack. I won't dig deep into this because it's frankly kind of a boring slide, but everything in green is licensable software through Entisys. It's all supported on Cisco at launch. It can run on bare metal or it's supported on VMware. And so you can do it in a virtualized environment and you can do this with VDI, GPU-accelerated VDI or grid-accelerated VDI. There's a lot of options here. More to come on this, and I'm hoping that we'll have a follow-up session with Cisco and Entisys when this product is GA. This is a live, or not a live, but it's a video demo slide. I'm not going to play this because it would eat up the last 2 minutes I've got. So Al, you mentioned you're going to be forwarding the presentation to our participants. I would encourage you to watch this 2-minute video to show the Omniverse solution in action. And now we're going to talk about another software announcement we made. It's called the NVIDIA Enterprise AI Software Suite. It's not GA yet, but it will be packaged resellable software through both Cisco and Entisys, and we announced a GPU to support that. So what is it? Well, let's talk about the GPUs first. So I already mentioned A30 earlier, but we didn't have a slide showing it. The A30 is going to be our workhorse AI, machine learning, deep learning GPU. 24 gigs of Ampere-based 3rd-generation tensor cores, extremely fast GPU for AI and deep learning type workloads. The A100 on the left is also a purpose-built AI. Oh, there's my timer. I'm running 2 minutes behind. Sorry about that, guys. This is a purpose-built AI GPU. It doesn't support graphics. Really important to note. If you don't want to buy the A100 for VDI. It's the only GPU in our lineup, as a matter of fact, that does not support VDI or have graphics output. And then here's what that stack looks like. What I'll say on this is that all of the stuff in green are the NVIDIA bits. So we start with a Cisco HyperFlex node at the bottom. It's supported with VMware out of the gate. It supports both traditional VMs and Kubernetes containers through Tanzu. We are working with Cisco to support IKS, which is Cisco's Kubernetes solution. And then we're packaging up all of our proprietary AI software packages. We've got dozens of software applications dedicated to various AI workloads. That's all going to be packaged up here. This slide doesn't show all the AI software because it's too much to fit on one slide, but more to come on this. Again, just announced at GTC 2 or 3 weeks ago. This will be GA in about probably 2 to 3 months. So we'll definitely have a follow-up with Cisco and Entisys on this. And then the last slide, and I apologize for running over, this is my team. So if you want a screenshot, you want to know who at NVIDIA to go to based on your region, this is it. I'm up on the upper left-hand side. Thad Morrow is, I think he's on this presentation, but he's not on this slide. He is our partner business manager supporting our relationship with Entisys. And then the name that you see on the bottom right-hand slide is a gentleman that we just hired named Richard Crowell. He is dedicated to supporting our top partners. So he is the liaison on my team working with Thad and working with Entisys to support all of our sales cycles through Entisys. And although I said that's the last slide, that really wasn't the last slide. This is the last
some
slide.
other sessions you might be interested in tuning into at GTC.
Oh, that's not my voice. Take a screenshot there. These are some of the presentations that you can go back and watch on demand. Thank you. Sorry for running long. And I'm going to stop sharing and pass it on to Andy.
Well, thanks, Gene. Appreciate it. Yeah, we'll talk about, I think, Gene, maybe even talking about the compute / GPU enabled kind of conversation and how customers can potentially leverage both from the same cards in some cases, right? Not all cases. That way they can do, GPU acceleration during the day and machine learning and compute during the evening and stuff like that.
Yeah, so great point. I mean, we've got a separate session dedicated to VDI by day and AI by night. I just didn't have enough time to get into that, but I'm glad you brought it up. It is doable. It's not science fiction.
Wonderful. So Andy, we're passing you the baton now, so you can go ahead. You should be able to have the share button.
All right.
And
Thank you
again,
very
reminding
much.
everybody, if you got anything for the Q&A, go ahead and toss it in the chat if you can. I'm just watching out the chat, so go ahead, Andy.
You got it. All right. Everybody see my presenter screen good?
We're good.
Looking good.
All good? Okay. Well, happy Cinco de Mayo, guys. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Again, I'm Andy Meyer. I'm on the data center team here at Cisco, specifically kind of focusing on HyperFlex sales for the West. So I wanted to quickly just run through the agenda. And first of all, thanks Entisys360 for putting this on and for the great margarita kit. Can't wait to jump into that. I love a good margarita, so looking forward to that. But, you know, I'm not going to belabor kind of what we've already talked about a little bit with the workforce changing. We will talk about cloud considerations, and, you know, there's pros and cons to each, and I think it's important to consider those. And I think we've got a good option here for you. As we talk about HyperFlex is the ideal platform, not only for VDI, but a lot of other workloads, but it really lends itself really well for VDI. And we'll talk a little bit about our partnership with NVIDIA and why we're better together and some of the things that we're doing, and then we'll wrap up with some additional items. So, look, you know, work from, there's no doubt, you guys saw the stats earlier from you know, Gene and Al, you know, almost half the workforce by next year is going to be mobile. And we're seeing a big influx. I think it's important to note that, you know, the millennial generation is starting to shape and change some of the preferences for how we do our work and how we support them remotely. And then the explosion of applications that we're seeing as customers transform to, you know, digitally to how do we support all these different applications and secure them and ensure that they are delivering the performance that people expect. And obviously, COVID-19 was a very big deal. You know, last March, we saw this huge pendulum swing out to cloud for very good reason, right? We thought this was temporary. We said, hey, we went from having maybe 1,000 VDI users to now everybody needs a VDI session. And so we needed immediate access. And the cloud was a great place to run to. But I think, you know, a lot of people thought this was going to be a temporary thing. The pricing was fairly reasonable at the time. But, you know, now that we realize that this isn't necessarily a short-term thing, it is going to be long-term, we're starting to understand that, you know, pricing is a little higher than we expected. And, you know, compliance and security data may not lend itself very well to keeping those types of workloads in the cloud. And then, you know, we really don't like necessarily having loss of that direct management and control. And so I think a lot of people are sitting there going, is this really the right long-term place of where we want to host our VDI workers and remote workforce? And so, you know, at Cisco, we work very closely with ESG, which is an independent company that kind of determines the value of our offerings. And in the study, they compared HCI solutions to similar public cloud offerings to determine, you know, which one really provides the best TCO. And ESG models found that Cisco HyperFlex can provide 13 to 35% lower average monthly cost per VDI desktop than the equivalent cloud-based VDI solutions over a 3-year period. And, you know, I think it's worth noting that the monthly cost per desktop for public cloud offers may remain constant if you pay up front. And the average monthly cost per desktop for HyperFlex improves as the larger numbers of desktops are deployed. That's the benefits of economies of scale and the improved density. So when you consider over a long period of time, the fixed portion of the solution costs spread out over that 3-year period, you know, we really believe we can show you a far better TCO, give you better control, better visibility, and tighter security for these workloads. And, you know, I think, you know, on one hand, you see benefits to public cloud, right? It's attractive from an IT cost perspective at times, the complexity of hardware and software refresh cycles, administration, all of that looks really attractive, but that, you know, moving off-prem comes at a cost, right? Compliance, IP, data security requirements cannot be easily addressed in the public cloud. You know, thousands of 3-tiered packaged applications aren't necessarily ready yet to be redesigned and optimally delivered over the cloud. So there's some challenges there. And I think the point of this slide is HyperFlex really does give you the best of both worlds. It gives you that cloud-like simplicity, being able to quickly and easily scale and just snap compute nodes or converge nodes into the cluster, and those resources are available to all of the VMs instantly. Cloud-like programmability and automation, simplicity of scale, and then the economics. And, you know, the last bullet there on the bottom right, you'll see Cisco Plus. We announced at Cisco Live a new consumption model. So, you know, you truly can pay by the drink and really not only get the benefits of the granular scale of HyperFlex, but now a true pay-as-you-go consumption model. So I really believe that this is a perfect fit for customers of VDI. Of the 5,000 deployments of HyperFlex that we have, I would say 50% of them are VDI environments. So extremely popular use case for us for good reason. And, you know, at the end of the day, you know, Al kind of mentioned, right? You guys have a lot of choices of HCI in the marketplace. And we're proud to be a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for 3 years, and we've won a number of industry awards. But there's really, I'll give you 3 really good reasons why HyperFlex is doing really well and why it differentiates from our competition. It's performance. We've always been and continue to be the leader in performance. And I know sometimes performance gets overlooked, but at the end of the day, look, if the system can't perform and scale, kind of nothing else matters. And we take a lot of pride in how well our system can scale and perform. And it's important that the system can scale independently, right? I might just need CPU and memory. Well, then don't make me buy storage with it. And Cisco allows you to do that. And our licensing model that we have for HyperFlex is very advantageous for that. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then, of course, the leader in TCO and everything that you would expect from an enterprise class storage system, always on deduplication and compression, point-in-time snapshots, instant clones, being able to tune the replication factor to make sure you've got maximum data protection and resiliency, being able to do asynchronous replication, active-active stretch clusters, tight integration with our backup vendors like Commvault, Veeam, and Cohesity to ensure additional business continuance and DR, being able to back up to the cloud. These are all things that come with HyperFlex and really deliver. And it should be noted, one of the things that HyperFlex is unique at is that it does ship as an appliance. So the compute, the storage, and the networking are all tightly integrated, fully optimized at the factory and ready to go. So, you know, setup is really easy. So, you know, I want to spend a little time on this slide because, in my opinion, this is kind of where the rubber meets the road, and especially in a VDI world. And you're looking at it going, well, okay, it's a scaling slide, but it's really important to understand how we scale and what the benefits of that are from a TCO perspective as you grow your VDI environments. And if you start at the top left and kind of, you know, work your way to the right, you'll see we scale very granular, right? You can scale within a node very easily, meaning very simple to add memory. I can add a disk at a time, no problem. Moving down, I can simply add CPU, disk, and memory, so I can add an entire node. And let's say that node is 10 terabytes of storage, you know, 3 terabytes of memory, and an additional two CPUs and an NVIDIA GPU. Well, that just gets added into the resource pool. All the VMs in the cluster instantly see that as you add it in, and it's very simple and easy to snap these nodes in quickly and easily as you scale. But what if you just need CPU and memory? You don't need storage. We allow you to add a compute-only node. That could be a UCS blade, or it could be a UCS rack mount server. It doesn't matter. And they can run virtual machines that can run the virtual desktops and participate in the cluster. The key is that you don't need to pay a HyperFlex software license for compute-only nodes. And we allow you to scale twice as many compute nodes as you have converged nodes, so 2 to 1. And by the way, that's not a hard limit. We can do RPQs and go 3 to 1 or 4 to 1. We just have to be careful we don't overrun the storage. But the point is that let's say you want to deploy 3,750 users. So I'll just pick that number because at 125 users per node, that's about 30 nodes you need to go by. Well, you could get plenty of storage in 10 converged nodes. Those other 20 nodes could be UCS blades, right? Just straight, you know, regular old UCS blades. you're not paying HyperFlex licensing on 20 of those 30 nodes. And if you scale it to 5,000 users, 7,500 or 10,000, you can see the cost savings become dramatic. And that's where we win the TCO battle in these discussions. So it's really important to pay attention to that. And the other thing is our compute-only nodes are cluster aware. That means they have access to all of the nodes in the cluster. Some of our competitors have compute-only nodes, but they're tied to a specific converged node. So they're not cluster aware, and you're paying converged licensing on them. So there's really no benefit. So we don't typically see that from our competition. So it really is kind of a unique differentiator for us. We do have GPU-only models. So we have a UCS 480, for example, 8 very powerful GPUs in this guy. That could be a compute-only node in a HyperFlex cluster and deliver incredible GPU performance for these VDI sessions. And let's say you already have a 3-tier architecture. Maybe you have a FlexPod or a flash stack or a vBlock. HyperFlex can integrate in with that infrastructure very simply and easily. We can work under the same management domains and create another data store. And it makes it very simple and easy to migrate off of those systems to HyperFlex and continue to preserve the life of those assets that you still have on the books. So very flexible and easy system to put in and scale and grow with what you already have. And we could spend an hour talking about Intersight. This is our cloud management platform for HyperFlex, UCS, and some of our storage partners. And there's a ton of stuff that Intersight does. But just know that this is a SaaS-based platform. Think of it as the Meraki for the data center, if you're familiar with our Meraki solution. But being able to quickly deploy systems, do all the typical management things that we do with UCS and HyperFlex and our storage partners, recommendation engines with AI and ML analytics telling us, where we can fine tune and understand how things are going. Connected TAP, being able to see in real time what's happening and start working on the root cause without having to ship logs back and forth and do the traditional things that slow down attack case. So very powerful for the lifecycle management of the environment, and very, very popular right now. And this is built on a CI/CD pipeline, so you're seeing new advances come up weekly. Terraform, we can do infrastructure as code right now as a service with Terraform. Kubernetes as a service can be delivered from this. Application resource management, tying into application performance management with our AppD platform, so we can right-size VMs in real time. All of these types of things can be delivered through our cloud platform and Intersight, and it's a huge benefit to as we continue to drive innovation in this space. So real quick, I just want to hit on a few key building blocks that all Cisco VDI solutions are built on. And we mix and match a number of different options for these technology layers to create create a system for specific user needs. The most popular designs that we have, we test and validate in Cisco Labs and document these in papers called Cisco Validated Designs. So think of those as a cookbook for how I deploy 5,000 VDI users with Verizon or VMware Horizon. And I want to do it with knowledge workers. I want to do it with task workers, right? These are already prepared and done for you. NVIDIA is obviously a key part of these CVDs. So a lot of good information in this and how we can help make this an easier deployment. And I know we talked about this, guys, the need for GPUs, right, has doubled since 2012. Common workloads that we wouldn't even think of needing this. So, we're putting these in just about every type of configuration you can think of. And, there's a set of applications normally found in really across all verticals, engineering, manufacturing, healthcare, media, entertainment, where the applications develop complex graphical designs. And while the Intel and AMD CPUs that we have in the server can power many of these, performance or rendering speed, could be suboptimal. So the GPUs from NVIDIA are critical. They're designed specifically to drive these complex applications and make remote workers far more productive. And the nice thing is these GPUs are not limited to just VDI, right? They're often used for AI ML use cases, hybrid cloud, and other environments. So like Gene said, there's a lot of different value you can drive from utilizing the NVIDIA GPUs. And he mentioned some of the new ones. These are kind of the latest models that we have, and this might not be totally up to date. So Gene presented some things I wasn't aware of yet, so that's really cool. I'm sure we'll have them in our systems here shortly. But coming up here on my 10 minutes, guys, I won't read you the bullets. I think the main thing that I want to get across here is that the benefits of public cloud, the benefits of on-prem can be argued. I really believe that HyperFlex with NVIDIA being deployed with the help of Entisys360, you kind of get the best of both worlds, and you're going to find a tremendous amount of value. Like a lot of our other customers, we have tons of testimonials that we can share with you and help you guys really get up to speed. And that's really, this is the last slide I wanted to talk about is we've created, when the pandemic hit last year, we created these rapid deploy VDI bundles. And these are pre-configured, already built, ready to ship, single SKU, really easy for Entisys360 to go and create a quick quote and get it out to you with a quick build. In their design, whether you have task, knowledge, power users, they're built in 500 or 1,000 seat configurations. And they follow the CVD tested designs and best practices. So, and these things are ready to go in a couple weeks. So these were really meant for customers who said, hey, I've got to stand stuff up quick. We do these VDI ready bundles and get them out the door to you. And we give you 180 free days of Inner-Site Essentials with these. So great way to go ahead and get started in your VDI journey on-prem, and Entisys360 can certainly help you guys with these.
Cool.
That's all I have, guys. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to share a couple quick things there, and I think I saw some questions in the chat. So I don't know if
we did see some questions. We'll definitely be getting to those. So thank you, Andy. Yep. Appreciate it. Gene, if you want to come back on camera whenever you get a moment. One thing I would like to stress too, right, is as our customers are dealing with cloud versus on-prem, we always ask from the VDI perspective, where's the data? Where are the applications running, right? So it's super important to have that question because that's going to give that best user experience. And honestly, 9 times out of 10, the applications have the back-end systems running on premises. So we are typically talking to our customers saying you need to deliver an on-premises VDI stack to enable that application. So that's one thing to definitely talk about. I think I did learn one thing. If I tell Andy and Gene 10 minutes, it's going to be a lot longer. So I definitely learned that. So we got Troy on. Let's get to the panel real quick. And yes, we will get to some of those questions. I will work those in as we come into it. So I do appreciate it. Again, continue to put stuff in the chat, but I did have some canned questions just to get us started. And Troy, we'll start with you. So Andy and Gene, talked about having support for multiple VDI solutions. And we know, administratively speaking, there's some things, but, really, what about protocol? Because really, at the end of the day, it's the protocol. Does it really matter anymore?
We want to get to Margarita's answer or a better one? Yes.
Let's do both.
Margarita answer, yes. After that, through our projects and testing, we do deployments on both Citrix, VMware, and as you get into that, you got the HDX 3D Pro. We've seen great performance on that, as well as you get the VMware Blast Extreme. So between those two protocols, we end up with really the best experience for the user. One thing that we're able to really tell is that RDP doesn't cut it, because once we enable GPU on device, the VMs, usually we no longer can console in, so then we end up having to do an RDP session. So that gives us a lot of opportunity to see how RDP works with GPU versus these other protocols. And yeah, I'd say definitely Citrix and VMware have a leg up on delivering this.
Got it. Cool. And then you also talked about hypervisors, multiple hypervisors being supported, but we also know there's some differences there. Maybe give our clients some information there.
Yeah, with hypervisors, does it matter? Yes, no. Yes, it does, in the sense that you want to make sure you're getting the right one for all your features, compatibility, best bang for your buck on support for the users, administrators, and overall environment. The main ones that we've seen are all end up supporting GPU at some manner, but VMware is above and beyond really the biggest one out there we see. They seem to be the leader as well on providing capabilities around GPU workloads, and so that's where we really see them as a leader. And when we get to GPU with the customer, we have the conversations a lot about the stack, and when we really look at the HyperFlex as the foundation for it, VMware really sits on top of that nicely to deliver out the GPU.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's definitely very important to get the alignment, and I think Gene would probably agree, between all the different stack layers, right? The hypervisor's got to be at the right level. It's got to have the right drivers on it. The NVIDIA machines has to have it. So there's definitely a procedure. It's not something you just throw in and immediately start working with. So yeah, definitely make sure to align all those components together. That makes a lot of sense. So we're going to go down to another question I had for Gene. So we've had a lot of, Andy already talked about some of the competition and where they differentiate themselves from the competition. But what about you guys, right? You got Intel, you got AMD, they're trying to break into that GPU space. You talked about Omniverse and some of the other capabilities, but where else do you guys see yourself kind of differentiating yourself from the other ones out there?
Yeah, it's a fair question. So I would go even further and say that AMD is not trying to get into the GPU space. They've been in the GPU space for a couple of years, and Intel's kind of trying to make a play in the GPU space with their Intel integrated graphics. Everyone knows that we are the leader in graphics, right? We invented it. We came up with the concept of parallel processing, which is the math under the hood that drives GPUs. But what really makes us a differentiator is, I think, software. What a lot of people don't understand about NVIDIA is we've got more software developers than hardware developers at our company. And I'm not talking about packaged software like the grid licensing that's been on the market that my team sells for the last 7 years. I'm talking about new products like Omniverse, like NVIDIA AI Enterprise, and dozens of other mostly open source software packages that we have developed from the ground up for machine learning and deep learning and AI work. So again, I would say that's the big differentiate for us. We don't just write drivers to support our GPUs. We create full software platforms for moving the entire industry forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely the leader in the space is what I like to talk about. So that totally makes a lot of sense. So let's go throw this question to Andy. Cost effectiveness, right? We were talking about on-premises versus cloud. Let's dig into that a little bit more. What kind of scenarios are you seeing from customers, either hybrid, public cloud use cases? Where is it most effective to kind of switch between different architectures?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you add more VDI instances to your environment, you're going to start to see the cost benefit with on-prem private cloud get better and better. And if you're just starting out with 100 users or a couple hundred users, maybe the public cloud's a great place to get started and start going. It's just like I mentioned, I think it comes down to the type of data that you have out there. Does it meet your compliance and your security requirements? Are you okay with loosening up on some of the control aspects? But I think as you ratchet up your VDI environments, cost in the public cloud becomes a little bit prohibitive, and that's really where we see the pendulum swing back to on-prem. And I think that's where we really see the most success, and we've got a lot of good validated TCO data to back that up.
Yeah, we definitely see it also from our customers where they have a fairly static user state, right? Where they're like, hey, I already got X number of users. I just need a burst for a little bit and I can shut those down. You're like, okay, that's a good, valid conversation. Again, as long as it meets the security and compliance type conversations. But again, the longer they run those as burst, the more effective it makes more sense, to come and bring that back on premises is what we're typically saying. Troy, any other benefits from a technical side, when we were having those conversations with customers around all the architectures? And you may have gone mute.
Yep. Had actually a recent project of going through this, comparing cloud versus on-prem for overseas graphics designers, especially as COVID hit, as some gaming companies were looking to bring in people to start developing or just allow their current employees to keep working. And they went all in trying to do it in cloud, and data locality, the files that people needed to work with were never where they needed them. Trying to get that up to them was just problematic. Trying to troubleshoot or diagnose any of the performance related issues that are being reported by the users as they're using the system in the cloud, very hard to really get to the root cause and figure out how to fix it. Lots of tickets with the cloud vendor. And so what they ended up doing was really then, after 3 months of really hitting their head on the cloud side, which should have been right turnkey, get your people working, go, was looking at an on-prem solution and just rolling out a hyper-converged stack with GPU and getting their people going through remote protocol, and found that a lot better than trying to localize up in a cloud region closer to these people and having to move all this data and other files up for them to use. So yeah, it's very important where you put it. And I mean, the costs, just playing around for 3 months, they could have bought a solution for the data center. And that's what they finally saw, just trying to play with this thing for 3 months, the money and investment they put in there, they could have gone with a known good hardware setup.
Someone forgot to shut it down, right?
You know, you have 24, people around the globe trying to play with it and use it and test it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it never goes down. So,
Never goes down. Yep.
And the solution was, just make it a bigger instance. Yeah. That doesn't help.
Got it. As you guys can see, people are putting some stuff in the chat. There are a couple things, and we have one of our subject matter experts, Art Janicelli, who's actually answering some of those. So thank you, Art. And he was asking, and we can take this offline too, which is kind of talking about some of the Cisco HyperFlex maybe versus like a Dell VxRail conversation. I don't think we need to go into that one as of right now because Art has shared some of that info, but absolutely, if you want to have those conversations, I'm sure Cisco's got stuff, and Entisys360 can definitely help you there. We're just a couple minutes. We'll still talk about the panel, but for everybody that is not ready for the margarita mixer just yet, make sure you get your ice ready. Make sure you get your lime ready because we'll probably be getting going in 5 or 10 minutes or so with that. So put yourself on mute. Go get yourself all the ice and everything ready. So Gene, let's talk about a couple more things. So taking the cloud conversation a little bit further, right? So now GPUs in the cloud, they are available, right? And as Troy was mentioning, he was worrying about cost. Maybe talk about a little bit of that, what you know about that, the benefits of that solution versus what the things that they have to consider.
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits to going to the cloud because it's immediate gratification, right? You just spin it up and you put your credit card down and you provision whatever you need. I think Andy already talked about the total cost of ownership, right? So if you're trying to run GPU-accelerated VDI as an example in the cloud over the long haul, the cost per user goes way up. If you only need it for a couple of users for a couple of weeks, fine, no problem. And thank you, because you're going to be consuming NVIDIA GPUs in the cloud as well. Another really big data point that a lot of people don't realize is the tier 1 CSPs. So we'll say Amazon, Azure, Google Cloud do not yet support fractional GPU, or the concept of slicing up the GPU. So when you are renting a GPU accelerated machine out of the cloud, you're paying for an entire GPU. And most of the people on the call probably know our GPUs aren't cheap. So you're paying for the whole thing. So it costs a lot less to do it on-prem from a GPU perspective. We like it either way. So consume in the cloud, consume on-prem, consume in a laptop, whatever. It's all good for us. But if you're looking for the lowest TCO per user, on-prem is the way to go.
Got it. And as long as they're doing some crypto mining and buying some cars for their home, you don't care either, right?
Gosh, if I had $1 for every one of my buddies that has hit me up for a 3090 so they could build a crypto farm. I just had a friend today who texted me, hey, can you get me a 3090? No one in the world can buy this. I go to my internal employee store and I can't even get them.
That is funny. That's good. Yeah, and I think you hit some of the things that Troy and I were going to talk about, which is, like you mentioned, the fractional consumption really not being there yet, and leaving VMs on, right? That happens all the time. Oops, I left it on. If your VDI broker is not able to catch that in time, then suddenly you're going to get an extra cost associated with that you're not expecting. So, all right, so let's talk about some implementation pieces, just some hurdles. So we'll start with Andy first. Kind of what are some of the biggest hurdles that you've seen some customers kind of go through, or some things that you want to prepare them for if they were going to be going down like a HyperFlex conversation? Mute.
There we go. Sorry, you said mute, and I did, and I forgot all about it. No, I mean, I think just from a general HyperFlex perspective, I think for us, the biggest thing really is, we have a pre-installed checklist that we need customers to go through and make sure the environment is up and going and ready to go, and all the things are checklisted, so the install goes beautifully. When that doesn't happen, that's usually when we run into some hangups. So, that's really a big one for us. But, I think as it relates to, VDI, the VDI, ready bundles have really helped us overcome just the challenges of having things ready to go and making it easy and getting them shipped quickly. But as it relates to, NVIDIA and in the GPU world and just things to kind of think about, just a couple things. I think it's really important to understand the driver qualification and look at the HCLs and, just ensure everything matches up. The CVDs do really help with that. You obviously want to do a POC with the end user assisted testing and validation. I think that's a really key thing to make sure that we avoid any issues when we go live. And you want to choose the right GPU for the appropriate user type. The RTX 6000 and 8000 are usually not recommended for less than 8 gig frame buffer allocations, as an example. And so, and another one that kind of comes up a lot is, well, which CPU best matches GPU? And we typically see the most benefit of having a CPU gigahertz of 2.3 or higher to get the maximum benefit out of the graphics acceleration. So, those are a couple quick things that we try to make sure people look at and help them onto a smooth path for deployment.
Some nice pro tips there, Andy. Good job. Troy, because since he was talking about the rapid deploys, right, and we had some discussions around that earlier. Maybe kind of high level, quickly walking through somebody about, like, once they receive the rapid deploy unit and it's set up, like, what would it take from a VDI side to kind of get that validation and testing, making sure it's working with NVIDIA? Like, I think just maybe walking a customer through that real quick.
Gotcha. Well, we'll assume they already have some sort of VDI, so it'd really just be plugging into the side and giving them an alternate place to run workloads. Really, all they would need to do is provide a new image or clone from the existing environment. We can install the NVIDIA drivers on the hypervisor, then install the drivers in the image, set up the licensing, configure your delivery with Citrix, VMware, and then get that access to that GPU-enabled desktop. With the rapid deploys, again, it's going to be a all-in-one bundle to where you really are properly sized for estimated workload they're giving you. So that's the one nice thing when those come out. So it's really about just plugging it in and getting your image over to it and then start rolling. When you look at the different cloud services that also are out there for your Citrix or VMware support, it makes it even quicker to get this deployed as well. So that's usually the process you're going to run into, and really once you get those desktops and applications set up, take it for a spin, see how it looks.
Yeah, not as difficult as someone might think. So that's good. That's good info.
Very easy.
Yeah, I think what I would like to kind of start wrapping up is maybe like next steps. And I think, Gene, I think there's going to be some customers who might say, hey, we already have some infrastructure. We already bought some servers. Hey, while the rapid deploys sound interesting, we already got some stuff today. What do I need to do? Maybe kind of take a customer, what are some options from NVIDIA that you guys have to kind of promote and kind of get involved in there?
Yeah, if you already have infrastructure, there's a high probability that the servers, ideally hyper-converged systems from Cisco, but even if they're not, there's a high probability that they will support GPUs. So I would say, and this is my pro tip, even though you didn't ask me for a pro tip, and this is going to come across as kind of patronizing you guys, but I am saying this with absolute sincerity, start with a really good partner. Of course, Entisys360 is the best partner out there. They're not the only partner. There's others out there. But start with a strong partner. That is the number one obstacle I see with customers trying to deploy VDI with or without GPU, is trying to do it themselves. It is so complicated. Everything from storage to compute to the applications to the hypervisor. Start with a good partner. They'll assess your environment. If you can add GPUs, great. If not, that's okay, right? But you got to have a good partner to work with. I've seen so many deployments fail from customers trying to do it themselves.
See, they're
And
getting the margarita mixer up
Yeah,
and running, so we're almost done on that one. No, I
and
think that's good, and I think the other aspect, we're getting the thumbs up. The other aspect too, I think that'd be good is NVIDIA does have trial, kind of a POC environment that they can go through too. And then maybe talk about that real quickly, Gene.
Yeah, you bet. And I think that's probably the answer that you wanted to get out of me earlier. We offer trials of both our physical GPUs. You would get those through Entisys. They come to us, and we have loaner GPUs. And we have evaluation software that's available for free download. So all the NVIDIA components of that stack are available for free in a POC.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's good because I think, like we said earlier, right, you got to check the hardware compatibility list, make sure it's certified to servers and everything else before we move on down to actually getting those POCs. All right, so let's wrap up. Troy, any other last thoughts or pro tips you might want to give some people about it other than your margarita preference?
size matters. So if you're going to go through and do this with GPU and your hardware, get your sizing correct. Understand the workloads, how you're going to place them, and where they're going to go. That's the biggest thing.
Cool. Thank you. Andy, any other tips before we wrap up?
No, just to piggyback on that, we've got a really good sizing tool for HyperFlex around VDI that really simplifies and helps kind of pin down what makes the most sense, and kind of helps with some of the scaling things that I mentioned from that we have the TCO advantage on to know how many compute nodes can I put in there to converge nodes, and it's a tool that's accessible to anybody, so we can drop that in the chat. But as Troy said, that's really an important part of the process for sure.
Sounds good. Well, I think that's it for the chat. I think we were able to speed everything up. So I do appreciate everybody's time. Hopefully everybody's got their lime and their ice mixed up all ready to go. And I think we are ready. Kathy, go right ahead.
There you go.